In a new age world filled with delusions and wish fulfillment by morons in need of attention, renowned experiencers of high strangeness and podcasters Jeffrey Ritzman and Jeremy Vaeni received invitations to a tropical paradise getaway called Paratopia. Little did they know, it was the same type of new age spiritual retreat they've been avoiding all their lives.
Oh, don't be shy.
Birds used to be dinosaurs. Don't tell Nessie.
Come on, you can shake it. Yeah.
Everything is subjective except for this sentence.
Anything goes at Paratopia. And welcome.
Hey, dude, what's up?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm alright. How's your week going?
Alright, pretty good.
I'm a little depressed.
What are you depressed about?
Well, I mean, all the stuff that's happened, all the drama on our message board. I don't know if you were... didn't seem like you were really paying attention to it.
Probably not.
But if you go to our board on paratopia.net, if you click on the message board, and you go into what else is on the dial, under the talk about the show section, you'll see what I mean. There's this thread, and people were talking about it for quite a bit for a lot of the week, and I don't even know if we should even be bringing it up. You know, it's like, it's just sort of a dead and gone thing. Maybe we should just leave it alone, but it's just been bothering me, and the thread is, come chat with Prophet Yahweh, Jericho moderating. I did this this chat at another website at mabusincarnate.com with that Prophet Yahweh guy.
Why would you do that?
Well, I thought it would be like, you know, easy, you know, like picking the wings off of flies or something. I don't know. I had nothing else to do that night, I guess. I don't know, but but he didn't. He smelled me a mile away. He didn't even want to talk to me.
Really?
And he didn't want to talk to anyone in the room. He just proselytized from the Bible. And then I left, and then Lily on our forum says that racists came in and started saying racist things. And so it became a big debacle, so I'm not even in any way glad to have my name associated with that little chat.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's been a rough week.
Well. Yahweh, huh?
Yeah, way.
What
What about you? What have you been up to?
I went to the dentist.
The dentist?
Yeah.
Here on Paratopia, how is that dental plan? Is it, is it more or less expensive than the mainland?
Well, I wasn't swelled up before I went to the dentist. Now I am, so there you.
Swelled up? You mean your mouth, your teeth?
Yeah.
Ah.
So I can't say my S's or my TH's right yet. So.
Boo. Sorry to hear.
Oh, you know, everybody's got a story this week.
That's true.
So who do we got tonight?
Let's see. Greg Bishop, who is fresh off the Dulce, we'll get to the bottom of that pronunciation, conference from that Norio Hayakawa was speaking about last week. Wake up. Wake
sorry.
up. The Norio interview is over. Wake up. We've moved
Sorry
on.
about that.
And and Greg spoke at that conference. So we'll get to hear all about the excitement of that conference and much, much more, I hope. Jeff, no, wake up. Jeff, it's a whole other week.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, Greg, he spoke at the conference. That doesn't mean Greg is Norio.
Well, that's true. Did you say what?
No, Jeff. That bit never gets old.
No, Greg Bishop is very good. So I'm sure that he'll have lots of interesting things to talk about. But first, this.
What? And what's this going to be? You can't just say, but first this, and not have a this.
Well, I was hoping we could talk a little bit about the network and all that, but...
No, the network. Oh, you do have a this. Go on.
We have been picked up, the show has been picked up, by Joe Montaldo over at the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. So we are now broadcasting to a much larger audience, which is great. And Joe is going to be throwing us onto... the U.S. cities that they broadcast to every day is a staggering amount of places, which is great. But we're also going to be on AM/FM radio in Louisiana, somewhere abouts, which we'll give more information on later as we get figured out. But if you...
As we figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, you know. But if you go to UFOparanormalradio.com, that'll take you to the page, and on there you'll see the Paratopia banner. So... amongst a lot of other shows that they run on there, namely, Live from Roswell and Eye of the Sky and, Through the Keyhole and UFO
Rob Simone. Is Rob Simone on there?
Rob Simone.
Yes, we are neighbors with Rob Simone.
Woo! The Kevin Smith Show and Banal and so yeah, it's great. And I should mention, Joe is the head of ICAR, which is the International Community for Alien Research, and that is at www.icar1.com. And I'm sure Joe will appreciate that little plug for that as well. So anyway, yeah, we're moving up in the world.
All right.
So some poor sap in one of those southern states is going to be hearing us on the radio. So
get your beads ready, ladies.
So hi, listener down there. No, hello to Louisiana, and wow, we're glad that you're here. So glad you're listening, and hope we can provide you some real good stuff.
Or so, barring that,
that. So yeah, so there you have it. Just wanted to mention that.
Well. That makes me feel better about my week. It's like you've just given the yin to my yang, or vice versa. I don't know how that works.
Keep your yin away from my yang.
Huh? Yeah, I'll try.
Commercial.
Are we done doing stale bits? Should we move on with the show, or do we have more humor left in us?
I just said boo commercial.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Greetings. You are about to enter the noosphere. A roundtable stream of consciousness podcast on subjects related to and inspired by the paranormal, metaphysics, and science. Join us for our broadcasts or visit our website at www.noospherepodcast.com, where you can download past episodes and join in our discussion forums. We will break your mind.
Please welcome to the podcast, the one, the only. By the way, that was my William Shatner. The one, the only, Greg Bishop. Greg, you are fresh off the Dulce, as I've always pronounced it, but I've heard it pronounced Dulce, so correct me there.
Well, it's actually in Spanish it's dulce, but for Americans it's dulce. But yeah, everybody will know what you're talking about if you use either one of those two pronunciations.
All right, the Dulce, I'll use the French, conference. On Sunday, it was the first ever. We had Norio Hayakawa on last week, and he sort of gave us the setup. How did it execute? Did it go well? What was the turnout? All of that.
It went really well. In fact, it went better than I think Norio thought it would before he even started. Because when it started, he was going to have it in the bar at the hotel, which held, I don't know, like 30 people. So that was filled to overflowing before the first guy started speaking. I'm glad I didn't go first because a bunch of people came later, and the fire department came and said, there's too many people in here, we're going to have to shut you down unless you get it down to the right amount of people. And then I said, well, let's just open the doors so people can sit outside the door and listen, which I came back after doing something to my speech. I walked back, and they wouldn't let me in the room.
Crap.
And then they shut the door, and I couldn't even hear what the first guy was saying, who was Ed Gomez, who was one of the ranchers who was actually basically put out of business because of all the cattle deaths on their ranch.
You know, I mentioned something about the cattle deaths, and maybe you or could follow up on this or know somebody who has already. In terms of the cattle mutilations being some sort of government thing, is there anything in the insurance policy that would be beneficial to the cattle ranchers for those cows to be returned, so that maybe that's one of the reasons that they do return the carcasses?
I've never even thought of that. I don't know how they're insured. I mean, I don't know if they're insured. They're probably insured against like a normal death or a death from predators or disease or something like that. But if they can't explain the death, then maybe they're not covered. I don't know. But I didn't get to finish what happened at the conference. One of the Hickory Apache people, actually a few of them, but I think mainly Hoyt Velarde, who's used to be a police officer and I think public safety officer with the tribe. In the 80s and 90s, he called around, and we got a bigger venue which held like over 100 people, which was right across the street. So we moved over there, and all the rest of the presentations took place there. So it turned out really well. The reason he thought there were going to be like 15, 20 people there. That's what I thought too. And as it turned out, there were like probably around 100, maybe a little over.
Ah, well, Paratopia did its work then.
Yes, thank
you. Job well done, us. So great, and so he had kind of told us that his take is that it's probably not a real alien government facility. He's more of a Jacques Vallée kind of guy than a ETH kind of guy, and so this was his way of indoctrinating those who only know about the ETH, sort of tricking them to come and hear other sides of that type of thing. So did you find that sort of went well? Yeah, I mean, because I know that you're also of that cut of that same sort of cloth, where you think that there's a larger picture where all sorts of paranormal stuff are interrelated. Did that message play to the 100 or so people that were there?
I didn't use it because I wasn't really there to talk about that. There was another guy there who was talking about that, but he used like occult symbols and shapes of buildings around Dulce to deliver that message, which I thought was kind of weird, and I didn't agree with it at all. But the funny thing about Norio putting that in there is that Keel and Valet, I don't think have ever discussed Dulce or anything associated with it, but he used their names, saying that that's what they thought was going on over there, was just a kind of an interdimensional door or something, which I kind of think that stuff's going on there too, because I didn't know it, but there's Bigfoot sightings around there that have been going on there for years.
Huh.
Actually went to the ranch of one of the Apache tribal members, and he described to us where he'd seen Bigfoot. He was like, we stood on the spots, and he pointed and told us what it did, and he's not the only one. So either
Did he describe animalistic characteristics or mystical?
No, just as an animal. I mean, it just looks like a big hairy-looking person with hair all over his face and his body.
And what was your thing was more on Bill Moore?
No, I didn't even mention Bill either, because what I did was basically my Project Beta talk, but I added and subtracted to kind of favor the theme of the conference, which was, what about this underground base thing? And the lecture was mostly how the rumors started, who started them, who they affected, and how they continue to this day. Because a lot of people don't ever really address that. They just say, well, there's this underground base thing here online, and who's that guy's name, Branton or Jason Bishop or whoever, puts up these things, no relation, puts up all these things about where the base is and what's in it and what happened there, but there's nothing really to back it up except that it's a good story. So what I wanted to do was emphasize to people there who didn't really know too much about it or just knew about the base stories, where and how they started. However, at the end, I freaked everybody out and said that I thought that instead of thinking there's absolutely no possibility there was ever any base there, I said, well, based on some things people have told me in the last year or so, I think there's a possibility. Now, that doesn't mean I think there's a possibility there were aliens there and growing parts in vats and some kind of deal with humans at all. I just think maybe there possibly is or was something underground there. I mean, there most certainly are underground facilities and tunnels and all that. Just how extensive they are is, of course, still a rumor.
Do you find people gravitating more or less to those type of stories now than they did in the 80s and 90s?
I think it's about the same. I mean, if people, it's fun. I mean, it's this thing where you put belief in front of everything else, and then you just go look for everything that supports your belief. Whether it's, aliens are here and taking over and have agreement with the government to whatever. And if you have that predisposition, you're going to look for things that support it and ignore things that don't. I try to look for things that just interesting information, and if it tends to push against what I think is going on, I'll probably be more skeptical of it, but I'll still listen to it, which is why I started to change my mind about there being anything there.
What do you think is going on?
What, now?
Yeah. Well, no, just in general. I mean, what do you make? I mean, do you think that all of that is sort of by design?
Yeah, actually, I think it's by design to get the craziest people saying the most ridiculous things so people don't pay any attention to it.
Well, by design, I mean by whatever this presence is, or by design through disinformationists?
Which presence?
Well, the intelligence, whatever word you want to use for it, alien, whatever, I don't know. Are
you talking about the underground bases, or are you talking about UFO aliens?
No, I'm talking in general. When you have, I'm saying this. If you're saying that people put their belief first and then they approach that.
Well, a lot of people do.
Right, but do you think the presence itself is fostering that type of approach, or do you think it's just human behavior?
I don't think I'm not sure if the presence fosters it or not. I mean, I think if people are open to it and they have some kind of direct contact with something that's not human, that there may be some limited, effort to push people in a certain direction. But I think it's kind of like, something's there and you put your belief system on it because you don't have anything else to hook it onto. Why not just hook on to what you already believe and what you think is possible and all that? And we're told it's aliens from another planet who are here to mess with our DNA or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So that's what people assume most of the time. Even people with direct contact, I think that probably 90% of what people perceive as aliens or whatever is contributed by their mind and not whatever they've seen or contacted or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. And knowing what you know, you mentioned Project Beta, and for those who don't know, I don't know if in case they fell off the face of the earth in the last 10 years or so, Project Beta is the book about how Bill Moore, a ufologist, sort of conspired with various people in the government to drive a scientist, Paul Benowitz, crazy.
Not exactly what I said in the book, but okay.
Well, that's what I got out of it.
He was a willing participant in things that went further than he would have taken them himself, I think. I mean, well, I said, didn't this bother you? And he said, well, the thing is you get into it, and then it gets more and more complicated, and they start putting more and more pressure on you, and you don't realize what's going on until it's too late sometimes. Well, that's what he said. Of course, a lot of people are going to say, he knew what exactly was going on the whole time, and he's just lying. But, he hasn't lied to me yet, and I've never caught him in anything that was a lie, so I tend to trust him. Although I haven't talked to him in over a year now.
Sure, but the point was going to be that you're somebody who knows at least some of where these stories come from, and it's a more mundane answer than people want. So when they hear that, when they hear you give those speeches, do they roll their eyes? Do they not believe you? Do they mostly believe you? How does that...
Well, I don't know. I can't tell when I'm up there. I'm just kind of scanning the audience, and most people just kind of sit there passively looking at me. In fact, if somebody does jump up and say wrong, or I see them looking at the floor and shaking their heads and saying things under their breath, I will stop and say, you got a problem with what I'm saying?
That's great. Yeah.
I if, you know, 9 times out of 10, you know, it's only happened a few times, but most of the time they go, oh, nope. And they stop making any noise or shifting in their seat or whatever. Or I'll just, you know, either that or is something I'm saying unclear to you? And I'll stop during the talk a lot of times and say, are you following this? Is this clear to you so far? If nobody says anything, I go on.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I noticed that Norio said when we had him on was that, you know, Benowitz kind of, he felt Benowitz was a lot smarter than what he was given credit for in all of that he actually was a lot more hip to what was going on than maybe was suggested. I mean, how do you think of it that way? I mean, did you get that at all from him, that maybe he was kind of, like you said, playing along or a willing participant to that? You don't get that at all from him.
Not from what I heard, no. What I got from it was that he had a single-minded idea about what was going on, and when he made a decision about what he thought was going on, he stuck with it no matter what anybody told him to the contrary. And a few people tried to tell him that, you know, not to be so, you know, to be a little bit more circumspect, including Bill Moore. Doty even said that he told him that, but I don't know if that's true or not. Right. They just said, you know, why don't you slow down? And he just wouldn't. That's not to say he was crazy or anything like that. He was just real intelligent, but very focused and obsessed. Right. That's the impression I get from all the people I talk to, including people that have nothing to do with, you know, the government or anything like that. Right. Researchers like Tom Adams and other people connected to the story like Gabe Valdez or Krista Tilton, who I talked to.
Yeah, I don't want to like belabor the point of the underground base thing, because I mean I've got a lot of other questions for you that I think people are waiting for. But
no, you can belabor it.
What has made you kind of think recently that there could be some kind of base there? I mean, all alien crap aside, I mean, it like I said to Norio, I said it seems to me that all these horror stories surrounding, you know, Dulce and you know, the, what is it, Hell's Hallway or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
It seems like
other levels and all that.
Yeah, all that horror story stuff. It seems like that's almost concocted to keep people away from there, and that could be.
Well, I think I think if there is something there, it was one of those hiding in plain sight things. Tell somebody exactly where it is. Get the most incredible, insane stories connected with it, so anybody that wholeheartedly believes in it and starts trying to spread that word is not listened to by anybody who anybody, you know, the greater part of the society cares about.
Right. Yeah. Well,
the reason I think there might be something there is I met this guy totally by chance. No, you know, not totally by chance. I met him through the flying community ultralights that I'm into.
Oh, okay.
And just in the course of conversation, I told him I've written the book, and he said, "Well, there is a facility there was." And I said, "How do you know?" And he said, "Because I worked in it." I said, "In it?" And I said, "In it?" He goes, "No, but I had access because of my work to the tunnel system, and people said that there was some kind of nexus or terminus there in northwestern New Mexico."
Wow.
And you know what? I don't know the guy's background. I don't know how to check his credentials right at this moment.
Right.
But you know, why the hell would he tell me something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Just out of happenstance like that. That's a little too weird to dismiss, like offhandedly.
Yeah. And then there's other people, you know, law enforcement people that used to work in the area, more than one, and people that live around there that all told, you know, with the exception of one guy, said that they'd actually seen some hole in the ground with air coming out of it. I said, okay. And, you know, are they telling me that to make me believe it's all telling weird stories? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I have to be open to the possibility that there was something there. Now, I don't think that equals, you know, aliens and firefights underground and hell's, what is that called? Hell Hallway or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
I don't think it equals any of that. But I do think that there's some stuff that should be followed up on, and a couple of local people there said, if we go up on the mesa and look, you want to come? And I said, hell yes. I'd like to find out for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to people that go on the net and say there's definitely nothing there, or there is something there. You people are all insane. They've never gone anywhere near it.
Yeah.
So why should I listen to them? Oh.
Right. Exactly. Well, I mean, you were talking about earlier about people who've even been in contact with whatever this presence is don't really kind of attribute more to what they see and experience than what the phenomena is actually even giving them. I mean, can you just give me your overall take on what you think that's all about, or as far as you've gotten with it?
Could you repeat that, the first part of it?
Like,
how much do I think comes from people's heads and how much do I think comes from outside them with regards to the UFO subject?
Well, and how they perceive it based on what they're experiencing. I mean, how much of it is interpretation from the individual? Of course, it's all perceptive, but just how subjective do you feel that it is?
I think it's kind of on a case-by-case basis, but I think most of the time, that just from talking to people, from reading, from talking to other researchers, witnesses, all that, and this is just my opinion, and it's purely subjective, is that there is a space in our mind where when something strange happens, your mind is furiously trying to put it in a drawer or a box.
Uh-huh.
Because you got to have, because of our survival instinct, we got to know what we're dealing with before we do what we're going to, react however we're going to react.
Right.
And anything, from lights on the road at night to discs flying around in the day to even abduction type things, I think that people's minds are drawing from their experience, from the culture, from what they've read, and maybe even on some kind of a subconscious, what's it called, collective unconscious zeitgeist type level to make sense of the experience. And so, already there, you've got, I don't know how many layers of interpretation in between you and what that raw experience was. The remote viewers talked about the same thing. It's called Analytical Overlay, which they tried to get out of the way so that they wouldn't be putting their own interpretation on whatever information was coming in, because that, immediately screws up the whole message. I mean, it may be that we've made up a complete story about whatever this non-human thing is that we're comfortable with. I mean, people say, no, it's scary, it's not comforting, but what I mean is that we've been able to create a box for it that our minds can use, whether consciously, subconsciously, collectively, unconsciously, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
how do you feel
that? As I can put it with my limited vocabulary skills, and if you talk to Mac Tonys or Bruce, what's his name, Duesening or
Duesening, yeah.
They say exactly the same thing in a far more intricate and articulate way, and I completely agree with what they say about it too. Mac's book Cryptoterrestrials that'll be out sometime in the next year or so will blow everybody away. I think it's like Keel to the next generation.
What do you think? How do you think that whole thing of it being subjective on a case-by-case basis? Do you think that goes as well for shared experiences between two or more people? I mean, is that I had a guy that I knew one time who had some pretty significant experiences, and one of the things he told me very, very early on many years ago was that you could put your average quote-unquote alien on a stage in front of 100 people, and 50 people would see him, and 50 of them would not. I mean, have you ever come across in a shared experience two people questioned separately who give completely different accounts, but still something bizarre occurred?
Well, I can't cite the day or the people or anything like that, but there was a case in Kentucky in the 70s where two people were in a car, and one, people are going to say, "Where'd you get that from?" But two people were in a car, and one of them said that there was a UFO. It stopped, aliens got out, and they had some kind of encounter. And the other one said, no, it wasn't. There was just a school bus full of kids that went by.
Yeah.
And, of course, there are shared experiences, too, where people report virtually the same thing. I mean, look at Betty and Barney Hill.
Right.
But, the people are generally from the same culture, and they know each other, and, there may be some sort of communication going on there. Bill Hicks when he talked about this, he said, "I went on an alien ship and all that." You think he's joking? You know that routine I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been on an alien ship and all that. I talked to one of the friends that was with him when that happened, and he said that we started saying the same. They were on a mushroom trip, but they weren't together. They were in separate places when this happened, but they both had the same experience. Later they were saying, "Did you see this and this, and did you go here and did you see these things?" And they both had the same experience. When they swore that they weren't next to each other when it happened, but later they found out that they had the exact same experience. Does that mean they were visited by a UFO and went on a ship with aliens? I don't know. It means it's a lot more complicated than people would generally think it is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you really start looking into it, you realize that our perceptions and expectations and unexplored areas of I guess you call mental experience or perception are really heavily connected with something that is as yet kind of unknown, or put in the aliens from another planet box.
So you definitely believe it's an external thing and not all internal, as some would suggest.
I believe it's both, and I believe it ranges anywhere from totally made up by the person to, to an outside force which affects them in ways they can't reconcile with normal reality. And I do think there is an outside force that interacts with humans from time to time. And I mean, it's been going on for thousands of years, and just because some quote-unquote primitive culture had this, same sort of experience doesn't mean it's false or made up or imagined or whatever. I mean, the language we have in right now to describe these things doesn't allow us in a lot of ways to look at the experience in an objective way. The language automatically is subjective.
Well, you mentioned the mushroom trips, so I'm going to mention it. Go
ahead.
Prepare to take a drink, everybody.
Yes, we had Dr. Terence McKenna on some episodes ago.
Dennis
McKenna. I'm sorry, Dennis. Yeah.
Did you channel Terence McKenna? Oh my God!
That's right.
I wish.
Practically.
Yeah. And he went over kind of like the whole DMT thing and the mushroom trips and all of that. I mean, do you think that I mean, I see a lot of similarities in that whole experience that I'm picking up across, the alien visitation experience, if you want to, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That seem to be really seriously connective tissues in there.
Yeah.
I mean, how much have you looked at that, and what is your whole take on that?
Well, people that have heard me do interviews before, read UFO Mystic, will know what I'm going to say. And have you read DMT, The Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman?
Yeah, part of it.
Mm-hmm. You should read the whole thing because it's probably one of the most important UFO books written in the last 20 years, and it has nothing to do with UFOs.
Yeah.
What happened, if people don't know, is that Dr. Richard Strassman in the early 90s got approval from the DEA to do experiments on willing test subjects by injecting them with dimethyltryptamine, which is a really powerful psychedelic compound. They were injected in their arms or in their butts or something. Anyway, however you inject
right.
this stuff to get it to spread, not intravenously, because then it would just slam into them. But the thing was that as soon as the thing reached their brain, boom, they'd leave their body, and they were lying on a table in a hospital. But something like 30%, or maybe more, maybe 40%, a significant percentage of them had experiences which were virtually indistinguishable from things that people said happened to them during abduction experiences, like meeting beings and being examined and being on a ship or something like that. And a lot of these people swore that they had never really thought about that, read really any of the literature, or had those kind of experiences before. And so Strassman was like, where is all this coming from? What's going on? Why are these people reporting this? I'm a scientist. And he said, I wanted to ignore it, but there was so much of it that I couldn't. my training told me to ignore it, but I just couldn't because they were so similar and so compelling, and there were so many of them. So what the hell's going on there? There's people lying in a hospital bed with a nurse next to them, and maybe a doctor having an abduction experience because they get injected with something. So I think it's a really important key to whatever this mystery is about with a extra human intelligence. And I think that's why shamans and people for hundreds and thousands of years have decided that the way to contact spirits or ancestors or whatever was through use of psychoactive substances that they found. How did they find them in the first place, too? That's another question.
Dennis had mentioned that something about the ayahuasca brew was there's a very desired MAO inhibitor, and he says how they found that, and I said, well, how the hell did they find it? How did they know to do that to make that work? In the gastrointestinal way, and he said, well, they say that the plant told them.
Yeah, they say that the plant told them that either. Well, how did the plant tell them when they didn't have the plant affecting them?
Exactly.
Who knows? And the thing is, it has to be cooked for a certain amount of time and all that to release the proper compounds. Like, somebody's going to say, well, maybe it was a mistake. Well, maybe it was a mistake, but it sure is a pretty significant one. Yeah. I guess they could have come on it, but it wasn't. These things aren't food. You're not going to be eating these things. They taste terrible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that, and I don't know if you've read True Hallucinations by Terence McKenna.
I read, like you said, it's like, okay, I read part of it. I still have it.
Yeah.
I've actually talked to him and heard him lecture more than I've read his books, kind of like William Burroughs. I've heard more of his speaking and talking than I have of actually reading his books.
Yeah, well, we're in the same boat there. But he mentions in True Hallucinations of having the sighting.
The Adamski craft. Of
the Adamski craft. I mean, that to me is another humongous clue to all this, because I've actually come across cases in my own stuff that, I talked to a woman one time. I saw upside down Starship Enterprise hanging over a field. I mean, what the hell is that all about? It's the same kind of absurdity and self-contradiction in some of these sightings that are almost. I almost get the sense that this, whatever it is trying to say, look, we're not what you think we are, and they're presenting something so absurd that you have to question, the preconceived notion of whatever your mind is telling you that it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was the woman saw the upside down Star Trek, the Enterprise, because that's what her mind connected with at that point when she was when something weird came into her. I'm not saying that's an is, but it sounds highly probable.
Oh, yeah. Well,
let me ask both of you, since I'm the only non-ufologist here, when people bring to you video that they're absolutely amazed by and, swear up and down it's aliens, and it's just some little light that's indecipherable on the screen, do they tell you that it is something other than what you're seeing? Are they certain that there's a craft there, other than just a little indecipherable light, or are they just getting excited over nothing, period?
Huh. Well, for me, that would be the vast majority.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people try to attach, like significance to these lights in the sky sightings, and I've gotten to the point after this long that, I'm pretty much, when somebody says, I've got a piece of footage I'd like you to look at, my answer is, how many windows does it have? Because essentially lights in the sky are useless. And unless it's something like what...
But have they ever described something that has windows and then you look at it and it's just a dot?
No.
In the sky?
No. I mean, usually someone's going to come forward, they're going to come forward and say, it's got windows and you can see them in this thing. And I've had that a couple of times where people have tried to read a little bit more into something that may be a camera aberration more so than windows, or shape for that matter. I mean, I've had people say, I clearly saw a diamond-shaped thing hanging there in the air, when I know for a fact, because I can prove it based on other footage that we've done, recreations of that show that aperture, overexposed of the CCD in the camera, basically the aperture squeezing shut so that it makes this small diamond pattern. They'll swear they saw it, and I know damn well that that's not the case. But you've got way more to consider when you've got people bringing stuff to you. Is it faked? Is it wishful thinking, or is it something legitimate? And, for that, I mean, I think you get a lot more of the wishful thinking people than anything else. So, I mean, that's usually what happens to me, or what I see coming in a lot.
Yeah, what your eye sees and what the camera records are completely different things. Mm-hmm. I think the further away something gets. So somebody could come and say, I saw this light and it was doing these things and it had rows of windows and things were in it. And then you look at it and it's like this blurry light moving around. It's like, well, I can't say anything about what you saw, but this isn't going to convince anyone, sorry. And all the ones that look too good, are basically, in the last 10 years or so, you start to think, well, if it's too good, then it's fake.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. How broad do you go in terms of saying this intelligence or whatever this thing is? When we're talking about this thing, what are there parameters, or is it just everything from Loch Ness Monster to Bigfoot to UFOs is included?
Well, you got to take things on kind of a case-by-case thing. That there's different characteristics that come up with different. Lake monsters don't seem to really care whether people are around or anything. They just kind of appear and go away. Bigfoots, on the other hand, sometimes there is some kind of interaction, and there is some kind of, really rudimentary communication. Even if it's just, oh my God, I'm getting out of here, and they run. The weird thing is that some of these things like Bigfoot and other paranormal things like poltergeist activity and people developing ESP or whatever happen during UFO incidents, or more like UFO flaps, as they're called, like the Mothman thing, which not many people know that there are a lot of UFO sightings, and a lot of people had psychic experiences, and that was described in Keel's book. There's a really great case that Stan Gordon investigated in Pennsylvania in 1967, I think, where these people saw something floating over the trees, and then they saw these two Bigfoot-like things running along a fence. And then they tried to shoot at them, and it didn't even hit them, and the things, I guess, ran away or something like that. And then one of the witnesses, when they came to interview him later, started yelling and saying that, like within an hour or two, started yelling and saying that they were right there and they were right across the field. Nobody could see anything. And then he fell on the ground and started writhing around and saying the end of the world was coming and all that. And then after that, his girlfriend left him and he lost his job. And, there's these strange effects that just have it's kind of a ripple effect. So, yeah, in some ways, some of the things are connected, and I think there's probably a nexus of weirdness that people get too near and they get affected, or they see things that other people might not.
Huh. I hear shades of George Hansen there, Jeremy.
Yeah.
That's his Trickster and the Paranormal. I'm still plowing through that, and I think that it's a great book, but you have to really be patient and read everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the big... when I was talking to him, and he was going over, a lot of the similarities in the change of routine, or anything that breaks routine, or change of life type, situations that seem to bring on paranormal events of one kind or another. I know, at least what I've experienced in this, I picked out more than a few that were absolutely that.
Yeah, so, you break the symmetry of thought and logic and activity and all that, and sometimes that reveals things. That's why occultists and shamans and all that, they fast, or they do things to completely break their routine and habits.
Yeah, I mean, but for me, I think some people read so much into that trickster thing. I mean, how do you feel about the notion that something like, the Meyer case has something to do with that same trickster type of thing? I mean, I think the only thing paranormal about that case is that people are still believing in it to a certain point. I think that, when you start figuring in hoaxers, I know there's always going to be, a quote-unquote market for that in this field, unfortunately. But, when you start figuring that, do you figure hoaxing and all that kind of stuff into that same trickster line of thought that it's to be expected in a way or not?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. At some level, I think people that are hoaxing are buying into or entering subconsciously or not the trickster archetype. The other thing that springs to mind is the stories about people who make crop circles in England, and there's plenty of people that do it. Mm-hmm. But I've talked to a couple of them, and sort of off the record, and it's been exposed in some place. I wrote a column about it on UFO Mystic that weird things will start appearing and happening while they're hoaxing the circles.
Huh.
Like lights will start floating over the field, or they'll be part of a circle that they didn't even do that's there the next day, or whatever. It's like they're breaking symmetry, and then something's noticing it.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's like they're out there doing ritual magic or something, calling down whatever it is without even trying to.
Huh. I think I have to go get a board and some rope.
Yeah. I asked if I ever went to England. I said, "Can I come out and make a circle with you?" Like, yeah. I said, "Okay." I want them to make the logo for Excluded Middle. I specifically had it shaped like a crop circle I was having an artist do it for me. It's like, that's it. That's the one. It'd be really easy to make a crop circle of the Excluded Middle logo.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. I've seen a lot of this stuff for a long while, and I've always kind of, and over the years I've probably been beat down for saying it, but that ufology and in general, like a lot of the UFO stuff, is really a lot more complex and deep than little green men from another planet and little gray doctors and whatnot. It has more to do with perception and our notion of what reality is, and the fact that we live in the 3-pound universe or 2-pound universe in our skull.
We live in an amorphous universe with a ready-made mold in our skull to stuff it into.
Right. Yeah. But I do believe, like you, that it's definitely something external. Ultimately the question is what, and what are we supposed to be getting out of it? Do you think that there's any underlying purpose to all this, or is it simple human folly that is just reacting, to some stimulus that we don't even begin to understand?
Well, I don't know. That would be pinning me down to a meaning behind the UFO thing, and I don't know if there's a meaning behind it. What I think it is, I think it can be used as a tool. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is, but it can be used as a tool to open people up to different possibilities. UFOs and psychedelics and spiritual pursuits and meditation and, ghost hunting and all that stuff. As long as you keep even people that are involved in those subjects, they tend to have a lot more open, sometimes it's so open that, it falls out, but they tend to have a more open mind towards strange things than people that aren't involved in it. And that's why I said I'd much rather go to a UFO conference than a skeptics conference, because everybody at the UFO conference, even though they're standing there with their mouths open, a lot of them are smiling. At a skeptic conference, people are smiling, but the smile is a sneer.
Yeah.
And that's just no fun, And those people aren't skeptics anyway. They're fundamentalist skeptics.
Absolutely. Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
a difference. A skeptical person weighs evidence before making a decision, and maybe never does make a decision. And a fundamentalist skeptic has already made up their mind before they start sort of looking at something. And there's people on both sides of the issue that are like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you super skeptical when it comes to military people now, or anyone who comes forward, like a Dan Burrish or even a Bob Lazar, somebody who says, "I was there, I worked on these things"? After knowing Bill Moore and knowing how that whole aspect of it worked at that time, do you give any of these guys any credence, or do you just? Well,
you know what? I'll be totally honest with this answer. I am automatically suspicious and start thinking of how this has been designed by somebody to make the people who are listening to them think in a certain way. I don't automatically assume that they're totally lying or they're telling the truth. I have this idea, and I admit it's because of my bias with the military thing and with Bill and all this, which I was interested in it before I met Bill, actually. A little bit. He just kind of threw it more into sharp focus. That I've seen so many places where perception has been shaped for an end rather than the truth about UFOs, whatever that is. That, yeah, when there's a whistleblower, so-called, that a lot of people have, place a lot of stock in, I kind of stand back and say, what is the person trying to get us to believe? Mm-hmm. And how does that hold up? And is there any way to check on it? Now, when you talk about Dan Burrish, I mean, the stuff sounds incredible. How the hell do you check up on it? How do you check up on a Bob Lazar? How do you check up on Thomas Costello and Phil Schneider and all the Dulce people? There's no real way to check up on it until somebody that holds that secret decides to reveal to us what's going on, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Well, this is why things like even, of course, Greer, I think it's pretty clear to everyone at this point that Greer is just complete garbage, but there at least was a point when he, some people bought what he was doing and thought what he was doing was great, and having that giant press conference with all the military people, but, of course he included people who have shady backgrounds or non-checkable backgrounds, and it seems like that does more of a disservice than anything to this thing, and it seems like a no-brainer that you would not include those people. Why do you think these people keep getting a stage to speak on from others who do want some sort of disclosure, or at least they claim they do? They want people to take this seriously in the mainstream media.
I think it's because there's always an audience for people that are going to say things that they want to hear. What is that subgenius thing? You'll pay to know what you really think.
Yeah.
I think that's going on with a lot of these people, and then it overshadows people who I think have a little bit more circumspect, genuinely confused as to what happened to them and why the government, their former employer won't tell them what happened or explain it. I recently went and met with Robert Salas, who I wrote about. He's the guy at the 1967 Malmstrom missile shutdown incident.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm fairly certain he was in the Air Force. I'm fairly certain he worked at a Minuteman missile site, and I'm fairly certain something weird happened to him, wherein a bunch of missiles were shut down or stopped working. It's like, well, and the military's admitted that these missiles all shut down, like 6 or 8 of them, no more, like almost 20 of them in 2 different spots at the same time. While up above ground, where Salas wasn't, the guards said there was a huge glowing orange thing hanging over the missile site right when the missile shut down. So, what do you make of that? What I make of it is something weird happened. Somebody really doesn't want to tell us what happened, and the people that were there will never find out because nobody will explain it to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think those kind of things are a lot more important than somebody coming out and saying that they were in Area 51 and they saw a joint human alien engineered craft or whatever. It just seems that there's more fruit in that area than something you can't check out at all. Whereas the missile shutdown thing, there are already some documents released on it, admitting that it happened while completely downplaying or leaving out the UFO aspect.
After you released Project Beta, did more or less or the same amount of those type of whistleblower characters come up to you and want to tell you their story?
I never had anybody, whistleblowers, come up to me and wanted to tell me their story.
Oh man, you should try it sometime. It's great.
No, I went and seeked out people that were involved with the story and who hadn't really talked about it to talk to me about it. I don't know if I want to be involved with whistleblower testimony. It's just, it's such a big project, and other people are doing a much better job at it than I would. And there's other things I want to write about too, besides UFOs and aliens and all that. So, I keep my mind open to those too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it boggles my mind that the very fundamental questions just continue to get overlooked. Just like you said, if you can't check out anything they're saying, then what good is that? Or if they're not dead by now or in a mental institution at the hands of, assassins and mental or physical assassins from the government, then how is their story true? It can't possibly be true or they'd be dead. I mean,
that's the thing. That's the other thing. You're exactly right. If this is such a big secret and so horrible, why are we hearing it?
Mm-hmm.
Why did Bob Lazar speak about all this? He said, I got shot at and people tried to kill me. Like, there are a lot better ways to get people to shut up than trying to kill them. And the other thing is, if somebody tried to kill him, I don't think he's any spy. They could have just killed him and made it look like he killed himself. No problem. So, the guy is talking about that and they're letting him talk for a reason. Either that or it's just not doing any harm, so why worry about it?
More like he's a controlled leak,
Yeah, exactly. And then somebody like, people keep saying this guy Phil Schneider, who used to go around in the 90s speaking about the Dulce base and having worked there, and then it turns out he said, supposedly he said, I will be murdered for this, and then he actually was murdered. And so people say, well, then, most people will logically say, well, then he was speaking about the underground base and he was murdered, so that must mean there's an underground base. That doesn't follow to me. It follows if you don't think about it too much.
Mm.
But I think it's wrong to make an assumption that just because somebody was saying something and they're murdered and said they were going to be murdered, does that mean what they were saying was true, or was there another reason for it? Or did they kill themselves, or what? I don't know. There's so many.
Or was it completely unrelated? Yeah.
Yeah. Did they kill themselves and then somebody came and put surgical tubes around their neck, or did they poison the person and then came back later and did it to make it look like they're, it's the simplest. Everybody's like, Occam's razor and the simplest answer. That's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. No answer worth anything is simple, especially when you're dealing with humans and all their motivations.
You're not going to be invited to speak at the X conference with that kind of attitude.
Probably not. Even though last time I saw Steve Bassett, he goes, "We really got to get you to the X conference." I wouldn't mind. I would love to go and speak at the X conference.
Well, that's weird because he's done everything he can to keep me off the stage. That's shocking to me.
I don't agree with him, but to his credit, he knows I don't agree with him, and we have a lot of diametrically opposed views. Yet he's still considering having me speak there. The same way with Norio Hayakawa. There's a lot of people that were diametrically opposed to each other at the Dulce conference, yet they were able to speak, and that's fine. I think that's great. The best kind of what I'd like to see is and I was trying to get one of these off the ground. Paul Kimball was. The best kind of show on the paranormal would be kind of like Meet the Press or whatever, where you get a couple people who are reasonably intelligent, know what they're talking about, and have done some research and are well-spoken, debating something. And you can listen to the best part of either or all sides of an argument and kind of start making up your mind that way, not by a documentary that tells you there's aliens here, or there might be a base here, or, we report, you decide. It's like, no, you're not. You're showing us what your view of things is so that we can decide based on the information that you filtered to us.
Well, Greg, there's a fundamental problem with the Meet the Press scenario. You know what it is? No one would watch it.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I mean, that you're right. That is the fundamental problem. You'd have to goose it up with something. I don't know. But
sure.
The Conspiracy Zone, I like that. I worked on that show for 2 seasons, and basically, and it was watered down and kind of stupid, silly, and Kevin Nealon made dumb jokes. But the thing is, they had people representing what they thought was the best side of each issue, debating each other, and they almost never came to any kind of conclusion, and nobody won. But It was a fun show, and you could hear what somebody who really believed in their side of the argument had generally did a lot of research and thought about it, presenting their best case. Although I guess you can chop that all down because they had Ann Coulter on once, and she was a total idiot. This was before she was Ann Coulter, and everybody knew about her too. I saw it was the Kennedy. Oh, it was the RFK assassination show, and Paul Krasner was on, and Gerald Posner was on. And anyway, when they got around to Coulter, she had listened to a couple different things. She goes, "Well, I just can't believe what's this conspiracy thing. Just what'd she say? I don't agree with you because I just can't believe it." That was her argument. I didn't know who she was at the time. I was like, what the hell kind of an argument? I remember sitting in the control room where the cameras were, and I said, what the hell kind of an argument is that? And a couple people giggled.
That's not good TV. What the hell is wrong with you, woman? Yeah.
What would you have a problem taking the stage at something like the X Conference where the dude who invented the Metatron is also speaking? Like, do you have personal problems like that speaking with people who you know are crap?
I'm not speaking with them. I don't care. I mean, if the person...
Well, no, but presented on the same stage as equally credible as this guy.
Who says that people that are conferences are all equally credible? I mean, I go to conferences...
I think by nature of the stage, I think by nature of everyone getting stage time for an hour or two makes everyone equally plausible.
Really? I don't believe that. I my personal view, maybe it's just to make myself feel better or something, but my personal view, even before I started, speaking at conferences, was that each person is presenting their case based on whatever merits they can come up with. And if you think they're full of shit, then they're full of shit. And if you think they're interesting and have done a good job, then they're interesting and have done a good job. It's not like they're all up there participating in a chorus line where they're all dancing together. Each person has their own show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but if one person's show is complete bunk, and I mean, like, you don't have to see the show to know it's bunk.
Yeah.
And they're getting the stage, and people in the audience aren't, who have, you know what I mean? I mean, there's a reason that this person is on the stage. I mean, that's the dynamic of having somebody on a stage with a spotlight who gets to speak and you pay to listen to them.
I give an audience
that they're an authority, in quotes, on something.
I give people that are coming to the conference more credit than that they're going to take people on their own merits and not say, unless, they've got to be a total skeptical asshole to think that one person who seems to have a good argument is equal to another person that's full of crap just because they're on the same stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's not a chorus line. It's like a variety show.
Well, maybe I should start looking at it that way. I'd feel a lot better about things.
Yeah, I mean,
Jeremy, I think what's poisoned you and I was to go to the X Conference. That I think it was the first time we went, and to watch like people like Dolan, who while I might not agree with all of his conclusions with things, he's a he tries to approach things in a scholarly way, in a serious way, and presents very well and all of that. Just gets a polite golf clap at the end of his speech, and then we go the next night and sit in against our better judgment during a Stephen Greer presentation, who gets a standing ovation with tears running down the eyes of the doe-eyed believers in the audience. That'll poison you against that kind of thinking that. I mean, I like to give people credit too, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be going in a real constructive way lately. It kind of seems to be, like you said earlier, Greg. You'll pay for your answer, and sometimes it'll cost you $800 to sit underneath the stars with a flashlight. So that's the problem I got.
Well, you know what? It's a free country and tough shit if you're paying that much.
Yeah, true. I mean, you got bigger issues if that's what you're going to do with it. But you know what? If I go and speak somewhere, and I'll have to admit that about half the reason or more that I go to these things is because one, somebody may find out something about that they didn't know, and I may. And two, I get to hang out with people that I like and respect and are friends with, and I get to see them maybe once every couple of years. Right.
That's the main reason I enjoy these things. It's just a simple interaction. But secondarily, there might be one person sitting somewhere in the audience who's got tears streaming down their face for Stephen Greer, and then I or Rich Dolan or I'm trying to think of somebody else. Somebody who's done reasonable, sober research, whatever their belief system, makes that person with tears streaming down their face stop for a second and say, I never thought about that.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes it worth it.
That might happen once every, 300 times you give a talk or something like that. And that, maybe more than that. But, just to get somebody thinking a little different way, even though they don't agree with you, might set them on a path where they, 10 years from now, break everything open and make everybody go, holy shit, why didn't we think of that?
Right, yeah. Well, that's the plus side. I mean,
it's not going to, I don't know if it's going to come from me, but if you keep stirring the pot, eventually, something might happen, and that'd be great.
You said that you were into things other than what we've talked about. What else are you? What's on your plate now? What are you working on? What are you interested in?
I'm helping write an instructional manual for powered paragliding.
Wow!
I've got to have that.
One for free flight paragliding, one for powered paragliding, and one for hang glider, powered hang glider flying. I also have put a few book proposals out, some of which have nothing to do with UFOs, which I'm not going to talk about because it's going to make me not do anything about them. Has nothing to do with secrecy or anything like that. It's just that it's this psychological idea that if you talk about something, it makes you less likely to do it.
Right.
And I have other interests too. I mean, I voraciously read books on the history of the Southwest. I'm reading one right now called Death Valley in '49 about these pioneers that came out to the gold rush and how they almost died and how they were eating their oxen and, starving, and a few of them died on the way. And it's just like, you read it and you think, God, people today are such pussies.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
A lot of them, not everybody, but yeah.
No. Yeah.
I read that and I go, God, I am such a pussy. I couldn't do that.
I need my Xbox.
Yeah, exactly. I like going out and camping and hiking and roughing it, and sometimes I go out hiking by myself, and a couple times I've gotten lost and almost screwed myself into a real bad situation, but I found my way out of it, and it's just, once in a while you got to challenge yourself. But these people, my God.
Yeah.
We are down to 2 oxen now. They are skin and bones. We just killed our last oxen. Now we are boiling its hide for soup.
Yeah. John's dog is looking pretty good at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Caught a crow. Have not eaten for 3 days. Now I understand what eating crow means. It tasted horrible.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So, that fascinates me too, apart from the paranormal and the UFO stuff and the ghost stuff and all that. I mean, there's so many cool things to know about, and the UFO thing informs a great deal of my thought, but not all of it.
Where would you like people to go to learn about your UFO thought?
Probably the best place is ufomystic.com, because that's where, which is down right now. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's been down since your conference.
Right after I put up my Dulce story, like that night, the site went down.
There it is. There it is.
So, yeah, on one side I can say, they didn't like what I wrote. And then I got in touch with the person running the site, and they said, well, we had a credit card number on file, and they said that it expired, so they took the site down, so they're going to fix it. So, is that true? Did somebody who didn't like what I said expire the credit card for us? I don't know. It's probably most likely that the credit card expired, and it just happened to be timed when I did this Dulce report. So yeah, ufomystic.com, which is also Nick probably does more writing than I do, Nick Redfern, on that site, because I've slowed down in the last couple months. But we've been doing it since December of 2006. Posting pretty much every day for that entire time, either one of us or both of us. There's excludedmiddle.com, which is basically where my old magazine is held in suspended animation on the internet. Project Beta, which we mentioned, is which came out in 2005. That's on Amazon still. Weird California, which I wrote about, 70% of, is also available on Amazon. It's just it's a guidebook to weird things in California, like I wrote about the Integratron and abandoned hospitals and haunted houses and all that. It's that kind of book. And then, of course, the collection of Excluded Middle, all in one book, all the best stuff, is called Wake Up Down There, and that's available from Amazon and other places online too.
Very good. Greg Bishop, thank you very, very much for hanging out with us.
Yep, thanks.
Sure, great questions, and I get to say things that I don't normally get to say, and that's always fun.
That's cool.
Hey, could you say that again, and we'll use it as a PR tactic?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Greg Bishop, and you're listening to Paratopia, where I just got asked questions that I never get asked, and got to talk about things that I never get to talk about.
Esoteric research and investigation into the enigmatic. Eerie Radio is a weekly podcast that features interviews with the world's leading paranormal researchers. Download episodes of Eerie Radio from your favorite podcatcher or directly from the show website at www.eerieradio.com. Eerie Radio. Listen, learn, laugh.
So, Jeffy, what did you make of the Greg Bishop?
I like Greg Bishop. I think Greg Bishop and I have quite a bit in common with our thoughts on this whole thing. And Greg's got his fingers in a lot of pie, a lot of different pies. And seems like a really well-read guy. And, again, we want to thank him for coming on with us because, we're losers.
Speak for yourself, Pilgrim.
I know. I think that I think Greg's absolutely right when he talks about Dr. Rick Strassman's book. I do think that is probably something that every experiencer or those interested in the phenomena in general should read, because I think there's some damn interesting stuff in that DMT research that I think I'm not sure how or why or the what's of all this yet, but I think that there is some kind of connection with that. Again, keeping it well in the framework for me of being something external and not internal. But I think we're going to be a while trying to fight through that quote-unquote hallucinogenic issue there. And it all comes down to me again as to, how do you define reality? How do you, if you experience it, then it's real, right? I mean,
well, here,
to you.
Let me throw an idea out to you.
Yeah.
The other night I called you up because I couldn't sleep and my room was thick with, energy or whatever, with this crap that I normally project outward or see in the space in front of me after X amount of time meditating. Well, it was just there, and it's palpable in the sense that I can manipulate it with my hand. I can make little swirly patterns in front of me, and I don't know that this is anything anyone else would see if they were there. And I described this to you,
right?
And you said it sounded like a hypnopompic or hypnagogic state, one of those,
right?
And that didn't really make sense to me because while I was awake was
that's the defining moment right there.
But also because I recognize this from the meditation stuff. So okay, there's part one. Part two is, if you remember, if anyone goes on YouTube and you put in Vaeni, Vaeni, and the letters EEG, you will see a completely embarrassing video of me letting this meditation energy do its thing, dance me around the room. What's really important is what's on the computer screen, what the EEG is reading. And essentially it's showing that I am in deep, deep sleep. I think that's the delta state, while clearly wide awake, eyes open, and all that. So that would mean that I am asleep all awake, right? So it is possible that that's a hypnopompic or hypnagogic, whatever the hell the word is, thing that I'm accessing while fully awake. So then I got to thinking, I got to playing around with it the other night. I meditated and I played around with it, and I came to a little realization, which is that when I imagine, my imagination is in my head. Like I can see the image that I'm imagining in my head. It's not projected out in front of my eyes like all of this stuff is. And then I got to thinking there are stories, and who knows if they're true or not, maybe it's just parlor tricks, but of gurus in India who were so enlightened that they could manifest things in their hands. They could just sort of take from the ethereal and make real. And I thought, maybe there's a trick. Maybe there is something to, if while you're projecting this stuff out in front of you, if you can imagine something and imagine it in that stuff, if that's what would not manifest this,
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wonder what would happen if you'd have just looked at the material, whatever it would have been, and try to picture or try to see a face in it. Would the face then kind of? I'm not going to say materialize in reality. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, can you form this, with your mind if it is in your mind?
But I couldn't do it. What I did was I tried to I was trying to create something. I was trying to pull it out like Freddy Krueger, pulling out Freddy Krueger's hat from The Dream,
All right.
So I imagined a basketball. Maybe that was a little too lofty. I don't know. But, I couldn't, the point is I couldn't actually, maybe with doing it with repetition I could, but I couldn't imagine something in front of my eyes. I could only have my imagination in my head. So I couldn't actually break that barrier. But as I, neither here nor there, as I was trying to imagine this basketball, what I did see out in front of me in this ether was a triangle with an eyeball in the center of it. Like from if the tip of it was pointing away from me, then the eyeball would be, the entire width of it in the center of this triangle. So whatever the hell that means, I don't know. But just throwing that out there because it was interesting. But I wonder if with training, if that's possible, or am I just going off the deep end in imagining what is possible? But it just gets back to your thinking that if you can somehow pull this out and it'll fall on the carpet, and I'm wondering if maybe I'm not, maybe it's possible to discover what exactly that mechanism is and train it to pull something out and have it land on the carpet. I don't know.
Well, I guess the real test for that is to, and I would do this. I would set a camera up and see about getting an infrared filter, hook it up, sit it on the floor, do your thing, and see if you see this stuff, and then just do what you were doing, which was to mess with it with your hands and see if anything at all. I mean, it doesn't have to look exactly like what you see in your vision of this stuff, but see if you get anything onto a recording at all. I mean, that would be to me the first thing to do, is to try to almost qualify where this stuff is or what it is, and then I try different filters. I mean, you go to a camera shop, they can give you all sorts of different filters that you can try out, and see if there's any way to visually see this thing from, a second perspective, or if someone's there.
How expensive are filters?
It's been so many years since I got a set in the closet, and it's been so many years since I bought them, and half of them the company bought that I worked for, and they gave them to me when I left. So I honestly don't know, but I would definitely try the infrared, and I would try night vision to see if that does anything.
Well, wait, you have filters in your closet? Can I just borrow
them? Yeah, you can borrow mine. If they'll fit your cam, I'm not sure if they will or not. There's all sorts of different filters. I mean, what I think back to is, in Gettysburg, I recently saw a special on the Gettysburg ghost thing, and on there, surprisingly enough, from what I have seen, and I've been to Gettysburg multiple times, it's an hour, a little over an hour from me. When you look at some of the visual data that's captured in Gettysburg, there's the manifestative quality of some of these things is less than what you would hope to see. You would hope to see, half of a person, or an arm, or the back of a soldier, or something like that. More recently, there was a family on I think it was in Triangle Field, and they were shooting towards the woods, and I think I showed it to you that these soldiers seemed to be walking in the woods, but they were off the ground.
Right.
That to me was, the benchmark for that kind of stuff. But there's a guy there who sets up a camera, and he's got different filters that he shoots through. In other words, he'll shoot one with a particular filter on it, and then he'll leave the camera where it sets, remove that filter, put another filter on, and shoot again. and he does this with 3 or 4 different filters. Then he assembles those pictures as if they were, a CMYK setup or an RGB setup, where you overlay each one of those. And as he does that, he's getting very defined, very interesting photographs using this method. I mean, we're talking about seeing a man's shoulder with a hat that's clearly like a slouch hat type of thing. Another one showed 2 people, one on top of the Devil's Triangle rock formation and one down on the ground, and they were clearly in, Civil War period dress, but slightly blurry on the bottom half of them. Some of them slightly blurry on the top, almost as if something was moving as he was removing and putting on a new filter and shooting again. So I'd give that a shot to see what you could do with filters that might be able to see something that is not readily visible to, or would be readily visible to, a witness who may be right there in the room with you. I mean, somehow or another, this stuff has got to be captured on film, because that's what's going to make people sit up and take attention to this kind of thing. Because I think the vast amount of people would say, Jeremy, yeah, that's interesting and all, but likely it was all in your head.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple of options for why you wouldn't be able to capture it on film. One is that it's all in my head. The other is that, that whatever this is in your mind, when it expands that way, that you are actually seeing more of what's in the room. But if we had the filters that were able to capture that, they'd already be capturing that on their own without me involved. You know what I mean? Like, there would just be filters that could capture more.
So in other words, you're saying that this material, whatever it is always there, is what you're saying.
I don't know that it is. I'm saying that I can see another. I'm saying that. Well, what am I saying? I mean, if it's all in my head, you're not going to capture it with a camera, right? If it's me projecting something outward, maybe you could capture that with a camera.
Right.
If it's something that's already in the room that I'm opened up to perceiving.
Mm-hmm.
Then those filters would already have captured that, because you don't need me or anybody else to be open to perceive it. It's just just there beyond the eyes,
Right. Well, that's the ultimate question. I mean, to you, what was this? And I don't think you told me, but I'm gonna make a guess in the way of this. The color of this material, was it kind of like a rusty red color?
A rusty red? No, it's mostly blacks and whites. I mean, mostly it looks like the thing that I was playing with. I mean, it almost looked like a sort of a, I don't know, vacuum tube of tiny dots of light or something, And then there are these flashes. I don't know. It's hard to say. And then it looks like my hand will look completely black, and it'll look like, and I don't know that this is the case, I'm saying it's what appears like, are like dots of light, like beads of light will either come off of my hand, or maybe it's just moving in front of it, and because it's a black surface, it looks like that. I don't know. But there are like several things going on, but they're all blacks and whites.
Blacks and whites. See, what I remember, and there have been times in adulthood that I have seen this, like, in a dark room, if you happen to stare at the right spot for long enough, you start to see, like you mentioned, something about like lighter colored particles that seem to be floating around, and I remember it especially strong when I was a kid, because I remember that it used to kind of scare me a little bit. These things that looked like clouds, but they were made of like a brownish, and then, like you say, black and white, real fine dots that seemed to be like cloud-like, but they would appear to be floating around the room, and then it would seem to me, or it felt like to me, that they came right up into your face and kind of did this amorphous type, blobbish looking thing, like churning almost. But if you looked at the light, they completely disappeared for the most part. There was maybe a touch of like an onion skin tracing left of it, and then you would look back in the dark and you could see it again pretty clearly. And I remember as a kid, I'd see these all around the darkened room at night. So that's why I asked you if they were that rusty color. And I don't know what that is. And I've talked to a couple of people. Well, namely, the last time I went to the eye doctor, I asked her about it. I said, "You ever hear anything like this? Like, is that some kind of, some kind of, ocular thing that you have when you're a kid, but I have seen it since I'm an adult. Does that have to do with my stigmatism, or what is that?" And she says, "I don't have any idea what would make you see something like that."
Is the rusty color the background pattern?
Yes.
The background color?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's like it's made up of that, but the particles are so fine. It looks like sand, but it's light particles, not white, but lighter, and then definitely dark ones.
Huh.
And they're made up of that.
And that's not just leftover light on your retina or something like that?
Not that I know of, because I remember, in particular, I remember, when we were at the condo, we had the lights go out. There was a thunderstorm.
And it seems like an obvious thing that the doctor would have told you if it were,
I would think. But as a kid, I used to call them flying poo. Because that's just what it reminded me of, as a kid. But they look like clouds, but they're blobby and amorphous type things. And I don't. That's why I asked you if it was that color, because that seemed kind of, like that same kind of, like when we had Deb Cauble on, she was talking about focusing on the space between the wall and your face,
right.
Seeing that makeup of those particles start to vibrate and boil around a little bit. And, and I'll tell you something. Reagan Lee sent us a painting that she had done, which to me looks very much like those cloud type things. They have that bulbous look to them, like her painting did. And, I don't know. I find all that pretty fascinating, no matter what it is. Because it's certainly, in the dark, sitting there looking into blackness, and you have this thing fly up to you, it looks so real. It's somewhat ethereal, but it looks very, very like you could touch it. And I never stuck out my finger to see if I could, but I just always assumed that was some trick of the eye. And most likely for me, it might be, but nobody seems to be able to tell me what that is. I'd be very curious to know. If any of the listeners know, I'd be super interested to know.
Super duper.
Super duper. Yeah. So that's it. You bore me.
That's all you got, huh?
Greg
Bishop was good, wasn't he?
Goddamn, yeah. That was really. I think that was one of our better interviews, to be honest with you. I think.
I like that he's just so matter-of-fact and no-nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing that, he's another one of those guys that, if he finds something out, he's going to talk about it, and he's not one of those close-to-the-cuff people. He's wide open. You can ask him anything. And I
always feel like he's mad at me, Everything he says is abrasive, even when he's like, "Thanks for having me on. I'd love to do it again."
I don't get that at all.
Jerk. Sorry, what'd I do?
No, I was pretty glad to hear that he was into the DMT psilocybin thing. That's I think that's something everybody in this field should at least take a definite look at.
Yeah, well, the thing that's impressive to me about Greg is that he, like we discussed, he wrote the book on Moore and Benowitz and Doty, and that really typifies the mythological disinformation, ETH garbage,
right,
that has polluted this field. He's friends with Moore. He has talked to these people. He knows these people, right, and he is not sucked into that at all. He goes the absolute opposite way. And that, to me, is impressive,
I mean, it's just
because usually someone who writes a book like that will then make a cottage industry out of writing follow-up books on, and then they'll become like, Cooper, essentially. They'll become Bill Cooper.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like Jacques Vallée says, it's a hypothesis, it's a theory, but the problem is that the data doesn't fit the theory of the ATH. So, I mean, it is high time to kind of put that aside and start looking in different places. Mm-hmm. I mean, what more do you say about that? It doesn't fit the plan. It doesn't seem to fall into that mold of, the things that Norio was talking about with the base and aliens and, Nightmare Alley or whatever the frick it's called, boiling body parts and all of this kind of stuff. It's like, what is that all about? That doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't feel like anything but a disinformation campaign to keep people away from the area. Certainly doesn't fit the common pattern of anything of a paranormal, direction. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's interesting that he does think that there's something interesting about the area, but certainly not, a base with aliens and all of that. He said that there probably is a base there, or he thinks that there might be. And if so, I mean, for me, I don't care what they're doing. I don't want to know. But I think that's probably where all of this alien, human, joint stuff and then the war with the aliens and the shootout and the dead scientists and all, I bet you that was all born out of somebody's, think tank to this is the best way to keep people away. And like he said, get the nutcases talking about this and nobody will ever pay attention to it.
Right.
So there you go.
And I hope someone follows up on my suggestion about some link between insurance and cattle mutilations, because the more I think about it, when I first said it, I was thinking in terms of, well, gee, maybe the government or military, whoever, corporation is stealing these cattle, if it's true. Maybe they return them to be nice, because maybe if cattle run away, you don't get insurance, but if they drop them there, you do. Then I was thinking, no, actually, what would make more sense is if predators eating it or whatever, if that's actually something that isn't covered, but running away is, what they would not want to do is have insurance companies constantly coming out to these ranches and sniffing around this stuff. So it would be the opposite. It would be whatever, insurance doesn't cover would be the thing that they would do. So if they don't cover, dead cattle, well, here's your calf back.
Well, I mean, to me, again, we're talking about, allegedly some kind of government agency. They can buy their own damn cows. And I got to thinking about, I think I mentioned on the Norio show that we did with him that, they could buy their own cows, but maybe it had to be something that had to be done to these cattle to then release them and let them, these bodies be around the cows that are already there. Mm-hmm. But again, if you're going to expose cattle to something that may protect them from some kind of bad mojo or whatever, disease or something like that, why? I mean, again, they could buy their own damn cows. And if you're going to try and intermingle some kind of vaccine without anyone knowing it in a clandestine way, aren't you going to, wouldn't the cattle rancher end up with one more cow rather than a dead one?
Well, isn't the thinking behind it that there might be something in the environment that you couldn't have control cattle for, that they would be useless for, and that's why you would go out into the cattle population to test them?
Then buy one.
Yeah, buy land. Yeah, well,
buy a cow. Go up to the rancher. We're from the U.S. government. We're here. We're doing some research into bovine immunity or whatever. We'd like to buy one of your cattle. Name your price, please. End of story. Mm-hmm. Why all this black helicopter? Drop them out of that and cut the ass out of them and rip the tongue out and all of this really bizarre stuff. For what? Buy your own damn cows or buy them from the populace that's there instead of...
I mean, we already know. Isn't it Plum Island? Isn't that the place right off of Jersey that where they have cattle and sheep and that sort of stuff for disease testing?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Because when that creature, or it ends up being like a pit bull or something, but they thought it was, washed up on the shore, and everybody was blaming that secret testing lab. You know,
right.
It's like, well, so we know that exists.
It's a monster from Montauk.
Yeah, the Montauk monster. That's right. Turns out it's a dog, but what are you going to do? So, but the point is, so we know that they do, in fact, have secret testing areas where they admit, it's not a big secret what they're doing out there. They've tried to be open about it, especially since the Montauk thing, to say we don't deal in domestic pets. We have other animals here.
Right.
So
I don't know, that whole thing just doesn't make any
sense
sense
with cattle.
Right. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I just again, if anybody's got an idea, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I've heard everything from government testing to aliens to satanic, well-funded satanic cults. So, I do remember.
Could it be that the cows know how to fly helicopters and they just like to get away at night? I interrupted you for that, by the way.
I know. I do remember a guy named Ted Oliphant many years ago on an episode of Sightings, back when I was hosting chats for them on AOL. They had a cattle mutilation episode, and they said that there was a white material that was found near one of these mutilated cows. And the makeup of this white material was very, very similar, I suppose, to a styptic pencil, which is what you use when you cut yourself shaving, and it stops bleeding. I think at that point is when they said something about, could that be the reason that these cows don't have any blood on them? Because you're talking about horribly mangled, and I used to work on a milking farm, so trust me, they bleed a lot, really bad. There's never any blood on these things. So I find all that weird, and then, when someone says they see a black helicopter taking off with the cow, and then sometime during the night that cow is dropped because its legs are broken when they go to see it. So obviously it's been dropped, or I think on one particular show that I saw, they said that these wounds that had been inflicted on this cow were done while it was still alive. So why wouldn't the government just buy their own cows or buy them from the ranchers? Why the clandestine stuff? Why the black helicopters? Why all that secretive stuff? I don't get that. And they're bringing back something dead. It's not like they're releasing a live cow into this field that's going to intermingle and probably get butchered or milked and then, out to the public with something good or bad in it. It just that doesn't add up to me. I just don't get that. So what that's all about, I have no idea. I definitely don't believe it has anything to do with aliens. So,
It's all about feeding Cheney.
Right!
We went political.
Right. Let's not go there ever again.
And now you bore me. Hello?
Hello?
Hey, Greg Bishop, huh? How was he?
Hey, great show, Jer.
Excellent.
Let's wrap this up before we have heart attacks.
All right. So, in conclusion, Greg Bishop,
great guest. Yeah. Not just good, great.
Great. Milk.
We got to have him back. Yeah. Milk,
yes,
good.
We'll have him back.
Dead cow with infestations, bad.
Bad. Louisiana,
good. Hello, New Orleans.
Woo! Wow, what's going to be fun is when we go and do, remotes from New Orleans. Don't tempt me.
I guess we should mention the website, www.paratopia.net.
Right.
Come check it out. We got a great message board, great people, great listeners. Speak your mind. I think that's it.
All right. Maybe I'll think of something witty later and tag it on, but probably the odds are not. Not.